And joining me now from some analysis here in the studio is Euronews correspondent Alistair Sanford. Alistair, we spoke about this tension between the US and Iran going into the first day of the General Assembly. But despite blaming the country for, and I quote, chaos, death and destruction in the region, many people thought that Donald Trump's stance was actually softer. He even tweeted that Hassan Rouhani was probably an absolutely lovely man before going to that General Assembly in New York.
Yes, a sort of stick and carrot approach, and people were making, of course, comparisons with North Korea, where last year Donald Trump used his first address to the UN General Assembly to attack Rocket Man and threaten to totally destroy the country. 12 months on, there's talk of a second summit between the US president and Kim Jong-un. Would the same thing happen? Could the same scenario be played out with Iran? Certainly at the moment, Rouhani and also others in Tehran are certainly not buying it. But we certainly knew ahead of Donald Trump's speech that Iran was going to be the new public enemy number one, and so it was. We'll have more on exactly what he said about Iran from the Cube in a moment. On the tone, though, it was relatively toned down as far as Donald Trump is concerned, certainly compared to his speech last year. That's not to say there wasn't fire and fury, but this time it came from the National Security Advisor John Bolton in another speech at the UN. Let's hear what he had to say about Iran.
According to the mullahs in Tehran, we are the great Satan, lord of the underworld, master of the raging inferno. So I might imagine they would take me seriously that when I assure them today that if you cross us, our allies or our partners, if you harm our citizens, if you continue to lie, cheat, and deceive, yes, there will indeed be hell to pay. The murderous regime and its supporters will face significant consequences if they do not change their behavior. Let my message today be very clear. We are watching, and we will come after you.
Thank you very much. We will come after you. Indeed, very strong words there from John Bolton. Now, meanwhile, EU officials are also talking about Iran, but on a very different tone. They've been talking about saving the nuclear deal. We saw Federica Mogherini trying to get other countries involved, including Russia and China. What is the US saying about the EU efforts to work with Iran?
Yes, we discussed yesterday at length the EU's plan, in particular this idea to create a special payments plan so that companies can get around, be protected from US sanctions and perhaps do business with Iran by avoiding paying in dollars, for instance. Even so, many companies are pulling out. Now, John Bolton didn't let that go yesterday. He attacked the EU. He said the US will be aggressive and unwavering in enforcing its sanctions, including those secondary sanctions on companies if necessary. And he accused the EU of being strong on rhetoric but weak on follow-through, and saying that, dismissing the plan, saying it doesn't exist yet. And there's no target date. So he said, we'll be watching. And he's not going to allow the EU or anyone else to undermine these US sanctions.
Now we all witnessed that uncomfortable moment when Trump was laughed at during his speech. Overall, what's been the reaction to his address at the UN General Assembly yesterday?
It was interesting, wasn't it? Because it sort of diffused the tension right at the start. This laughter came very early on when Donald Trump said that his administration had accomplished more than any other in the history of our country. A lot of people who were doing the laughing were thinking, hang on, he's ripped up the International Accord on Climate Change, he's ripped up the Iran nuclear deal, he's declared a trade war with China and more.
Fine.
Yeah, quite. But who will have the last laugh? Many conservatives, commentators and supporters of Donald Trump, and they've been tweeting about this, have been highlighting what they see are his achievements in terms of the economy at home. And also many populists abroad might be hang on to what he said about the nation state and about individual countries doing their own thing. You can think of the Orbans, maybe even Mr. Putin. It could be that they're not so much laughing at Donald Trump, but with him.